Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am pumped you're here today because the topic that we're going into is very important to me. It's recognizing your potential. I've said it many times on this show. I think everyone is capable of doing great things. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of commitment. But through setting goals and doing the work that's enough to get those goals done, you can achieve great things and become someone that you never even imagined you could become. So strap in, because that's what we're talking about today. Let's dive in. All right. What is going on, guys? I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about potential quite a bit. And I don't know if it's because I'm reading a book right now called Undeniable by Cameron Hanes, who's one of my favorite people out there in terms of being an example of discipline, consistency, and hard work. But in it, he talks about this way that he started ultra running. And to give you some context, Cameron Hanes, he just finished the Cocodona 250, which is a race that starts in southern Arizona and goes all the way up to Flagstaff. Now, this guy, he went into this race with a broken foot. People told him not to do it, but he's like, I committed to it. I got to get this done. A little crazy, but he still did it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is at the beginning of this book, Cameron Hanes talks about how he was kind of just going wherever life was pushing him. He lived in Oregon, and he lived in this little town. And his dream at the time was to have a single wide trailer and a truck to get him to work. That's all he wanted in life, was those two things. But once he started bow hunting, he realized that there's a little bit more out there for him. So he pushed himself on the hunts and realized that maybe he needed to discipline his body more so he could be more ready to be a better hunter. And so he started signing up for races. And he talks about how in the beginning of his running career, he signed up for a 10K, but dropped out at mile 5. And if you're not familiar with the distance of a 10K, it's 6.24 miles. And so he's right there at the finish line, pretty close to it, and he drops out. But then you switch back to what I told you at the beginning. This guy just finished a 250-mile race with a broken foot. So how do you get from that point where you drop out of a 10K at mile 5 to running a 250-mile race with a broken foot? I can guarantee you the entire time, he's like, I want to drop out, but I got to keep going. How do you do that? You have to recognize your potential. You have to believe that you can do great things and then start setting small goals to get you there. So let's break it down. Because at some point, we all hit a crossroad. Like, we have a vision of what we could be, and there's a potential that's just waiting to be unlocked. And the question that we have to ponder and think about is, are we willing to do the work to get there? Because you might want to be a podcaster, but are you willing to sit, study, record, edit, and do all the things that's required of you to do a podcast? You might want to be an ultramarathoner, but are you willing to spend hours a day training and beating your body to a pulp just to see if you can do that race? Are you willing to try and lose that 20 pounds you said you were going to 2 years ago, but you haven't yet because the decisions to choose healthier foods, to exercise, to supplement your diet is hard, right? How do you get there? Well, what does living up to your potential really mean? For me, I think it's about knowing your capabilities, pushing your boundaries, and getting a little bit uncomfortable in the process, and having the confidence to go after bigger goals. That's the key, is you have to see what your capabilities are, understand where you're starting, and then have a vision for yourself and say, am I even disciplined enough to get there? And what can I do in my life to find a way to do it? I often think of Epictetus, who is he's an ancient Stoic. And Epictetus actually has a very interesting story because he was a slave. And then I think he was released. I don't really know how that happened, but eventually he was released at some point. And he becomes a Stoic philosopher and he becomes a teacher. And he's telling everyone about how all these problems that we think about are mostly in our minds. And this is coming from a guy that was literally in bondage, right? He was owned by someone and told to do certain things every day. But he has this thing, this quote that I often think about. And he says, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Again, this guy was a slave. And so he somehow came up with the idea that, you know what, I'm a slave, but I can't control that. I can control how I respond to it. I cannot fathom that mindset. That's a different type of human being. But still, the principle applies. We can't control what happens to us, but we control how we respond to it. And you've heard that before by many other people. Because it's true. You don't have control over external circumstances. You can't control if you lose your job, or you can't control if, there's a fire in your house, as terrible as that is. Actually, you might be able to control that if it's in the stove or whatever, but I don't know, let's just say it's an electrical fire. But terrible things will happen to you. And the important thing is recognizing how you respond to them. So take that principle and apply it to your current circumstances. You may not be where you want to be. That's an important realization to make. Because if you understand that, hey, this isn't the life that I imagined for myself, that's a starting point. Then you can ask yourself the question of, okay, well, what is the life that I imagined? Where did I see myself in 10 years ago? Where did I want to be now? And that's a good starting point for you to think about. Because at this point, if you're thinking, man, I wasted 10 years of my life, or I wasted 2 years of my life just kind of messing around, letting the wind blow me place to place, you don't want to regret that. You can learn from it, but don't regret it. Because again, that's only going to get you in a worse spot. And so at this point, you recognize that, hey, you know what? I'm not where I wanted to be, but I know I can still get there. If I push myself, if I test my limits, if I do the hard things that's required to do it. And everyone starts in a different place. I often think about the times when I started running, how those runs were always difficult for me. And I've mentioned it before, but at the beginning I had, a 10-minute pace per mile. And now I just got done with the run and it was about 7 minutes a mile. But shaving off 3 minutes doesn't come naturally. That comes through consistent work. It comes through daily dedicated effort. There's times where I wanted to quit and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? This sucks. This is freaking hard. But I believed that there was something at the end of the tunnel that I knew would make me a better person. Come to find out, that's been true. And that's why I've stayed dedicated to running, to podcasting, to being a loyal, dedicated husband, to all these things that are important in my life that I want to become better at. But it all requires work. People who say oh yeah, marriage doesn't require work. It does. If you don't show up every day for your person, the relationship is not going to flourish as it should. Same goes for running. Same goes for podcasting. Same goes for anything that you're thinking about. If you want to be a painter, same thing. You're not going to get better if you just paint once and then put it on the shelf for a year and then try it again. It's a daily thing. And I love watching people who are amazing at that kind of stuff. People who paint, that's all my TikTok For You page. It's just people sharing art, people cooking, people sharing their hobbies. I love seeing what they're able to do. And that's what I'm trying to get across now is your thing doesn't have to be running. It doesn't have to be podcasting. But I know that there's something deep down inside you that you long for, that you want to do, that you want to spend more time on. And you have to recognize your potential in that area. And if it's something that is that important to you, maybe it's time for you to maybe take a step back and think, okay, well, how can I make this happen for me? What can I do? It all takes effort. And that's where setting goals comes in. Because now you have this idea of where could I be? What do I want to focus on? I want to focus on getting my painting better. Great. Now, how do we do it? Let's start by setting some goals together. That's step number one. And I don't think it's good to go right out the gate and be okay, well, I want to start being a runner. Maybe I can go after a marathon in 2 months. I've never really ran, but I think I can do it. And you might be able to, but man, you are going to hurt. Start out small. Have a big overarching goal, but start small with micro goals. So if your goal is to run a marathon, say, okay, well, I just need to start running more. Let's just get into shape. So 3 days a week, I'm going to dedicate to running. Your first runs might look like a mile each. They might look very small. And then at the end, you'll think, how the hell am I going to run a marathon? But I'll tell you how. You show up every day, you do the hard work, and you keep going. Like, I always think about that when I'm struggling in anything that I'm doing. If it's podcasting, if I feel stuck in that area, which over the past couple months, there has been times where I've questioned where the future of the podcast is going. And in my opinion, I think it's going to be a very educational formatted podcast with also teachings of discipline and fitness to help along with those things. Because as I've mentioned before, I believe if you're able to be disciplined in that area, it bleeds into every other aspect of your life, making you better in them. And so I've thought about where the goal of the podcast is. And the whole thing that I want to talk about is, I have different interests than you do. Like I said, running, podcasting, business, building content. Like I love that kind of stuff. But yours might look very different. And so a goal for this podcast now is to have other people come on and share their stories. I had a guest scheduled for this upcoming Thursday episode, but they fell through. So I just, we're going today solo, and that's okay. Things like that will happen, which is a great segue to go into that. Along the journey to get to that goal, roadblocks will come up. Things will not go as smoothly as you have wished. You will fail at times. You will question your ability. You will run into self-doubt. But if you're able to accomplish small micro goals on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, that big overarching one that we talked about will be a little bit more reasonable to achieve. And it just starts with one decision to actually get after it. You will run into doubt and fear, and that's what we're talking about next. Because I can't tell you how many times I've doubted myself or feared what the outcome could be on my own personal getting after it journey. Like when I first decided to run a sub 3, man, I was scared of that. I was scared of that because I knew the training was going to be incredibly difficult, which it was. I knew that in the race, it was going to be so hard to keep that pace. And then even on race day, it was freezing outside. It started pouring rain on us. We were all drenched. All the runners were. And I still had to push through that. And even during the race, I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to make that time because of all the work that went into it up to this point. Even with podcasting, when I've mentioned when I first started creating this and I first hit upload, that was tough for me. And now it's like I'm trying to create more content for people to kind of get an idea of who I am and what I do and the things that I'm interested in and how I live my life to be disciplined and to achieve the goals that I want to. So maybe that you can learn something from it along the way. But creating content, it's pretty scary. Like I've been on TikTok and Instagram and all those places where, the comments just kind of rule the world there. And some of them are just brutal. Straight up, like, pretty mean. And one of the reasons why I haven't done content this way is because I'm subjugating myself to that. I'm putting myself out there, and I know I'm going to get lit up a few times. But at the end of the day, I think of the quote that no one doing better than you will hate on you. No one who is doing better than you in life will shoot you down. In fact, those are the people that will build you up. And in fact, those are the people that you need to surround yourself by to help you achieve those goals. Shout out to my wife, because anytime I create a piece of content, she's always like, yeah, this is good. This is good. Or she'll even give me some suggestions or feedback. But the most important thing that she does for me is that she believes in me, which helps me believe in myself. Same thing with my brother Drew. He says the same thing. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm trying to say that as you need to surround yourself by people who will build you up because they see potential in you that you do not see in yourself. And maybe you can recognize it through their eyes. Getting a little personal here, but sometimes I don't feel good about myself. Either physically, like I think I'm a fat slob because maybe I overate for a few days. And sorry, I'm drinking electrolytes. I had a hot run today. I wish this was sponsored by Element. I'm actually drinking Trace Minerals electrolytes, which I think are better than Element. They're delicious, and they have a lot of good minerals in them. So check out Trace Minerals if you're an endurance athlete or just want some more electrolytes. It'll change your life. Back to what I was saying. So I think a lot of the times, like when I'm beating myself up, I'll go and I'll talk to my wife about it. And, you know, usually I'm there to like just kind of vent a little bit. But she always says something. She always says, try and see yourself the way I see you. And it sounds cheesy, but I will. And I'll try and picture that. And most of the times I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm overthinking this thing. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Sometimes that's needed, being a little bit hard on yourself. But it's always important to try and see yourself through other people's eyes. And that comes from surrounding yourself with great people. And they help you overcome that doubt and fear. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of Post Malone starting his career, but it's a very interesting one because he suffered a lot of self-doubt and rejection early on in his career. And he still believed in his potential. And eventually he's become this global superstar that almost everyone knows. But think about that at the beginning of his career. You know, he shows up to the recording studio and he's got these tattoos on his face. He's got this gold grill. He's got super long hair. If you don't remember the old pictures of Post Malone, I'll put one up right here. There he is. And it's just kind of like scary. I can't even imagine that. But he still was like, hey, whatever. Some people are rejecting me, but I think I have something I can offer here. And he kept going. So there might be people who criticize you. You might get some critics. But again, no one who's doing better than you in life will ever critique you. They might give you some constructive criticism, but listen to it. It's feedback. It's not a personal attack. It's feedback. That's how you should look at it. That's how I do, and it helps me a ton. I frequently think of the quote that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. You know, it looks like this big, scary river, and it might be going fast. But you step into it, and you're like, actually, this is not as bad as I thought. This is not as bad as I thought. That's my Fedora boy accent there. Allie's going to get mad at me for that, but anyways, the principle applies. Fear is just a construct of the mind. Step into it. See what happens. If you get hurt no, I don't want to take liability for that. I was going to say if you get hurt, come back and tell me I was wrong. But listen, just step into the fear. You got nothing to worry about. I'm rooting for you, and you should be rooting for yourself too. Because when you feel like you're in an uncomfortable situation, you're out of your comfort zone, that's a good sign. That means you're doing something right. Because you've never been here before. So celebrate that. Once you get over that feeling, be like, hell yeah. Pat yourself on the back. Say, I did something different today. And I'm getting shit done, baby. That's right. Now, one thing I always talk about, discipline and consistency. Oh, Brett, you're going in the discipline and consistency thing again. Yes, I am. Because only through that can you actually recognize your potential. Discipline is the foundation for reaching your potential. Because this is what's going to get the daily effort across the finish line when motivation wanes. When it's not there. Discipline is the bridge between potential and achievement. I've had many days where I wake up and I don't want to lace up my shoes and go run. But I know what I want and I have to do it. Sometimes my body hurts. It's sore. It's like, why are we doing this again? But I say, hey, let's go. You know what you signed up for. You have a goal in mind. Let's go. The podcast, same thing. I run into doubt. I pivot. And I do the daily work to make something happen. I'm trying to make something happen in this podcast. At least something where someone listens to this. The goal of this whole thing is to have one person listen to this. To recognize some potential in themselves. To see that they are capable of doing more. That's why I'm trying to have more guests on to talk about their stories, to cover principles like recognizing your own potential. Because you don't want to live a life of regret. You need to take chances on yourself. You need to be confident in yourself. And that takes work. It comes Those results, that confidence comes from discipline and consistency. That's the reason I always reference Jocko's discipline equals freedom mantra, because it does. And I think about David Goggins, who was this 350-pound overweight man, but decided to make a difference, or decided to make a change one day that made all the difference. He became a Navy SEAL. Now he's running ultra marathons nonstop. The guy has metal rods in his knee, but he still goes, and he's unbreakable. In the same book, Undeniable by Cam Hanes, he shares the story of David Goggins that is just, it's scary, because he says that, like, oh yeah, David Goggins is a really cool guy to hang out with. But once he gets in a competitive mode, once he gets in the gym, once he goes on a run or anything like that, he turns into Goggins, which is a unrelenting force to deal with. So it all comes from discipline and consistency. If you've read any of David Goggins' book, he talks about all the pain that went into this drastic change in his life, and how he would spend 4 hours a day exercising, eating 1,200 calories a day, studying for 6 hours a day, studying 2 of those hours while he's on a bike, so he's exercising during that time. And he just did not stop because he had this goal to become a Navy SEAL, and he saw that there was potential there. He recognized that, okay, other people have done this before. That means I can do it. But it means I'm going to have to make a ton of life changes. This is David Goggins' old photo. And this is David Goggins now, if you're watching. That didn't come overnight. That came through sheer will and just doing the reps daily, even when you don't want to. That's an important principle to live by in all aspects. It doesn't have to just be fitness too. Because how are you going to be successful at work if you just show up on the days that you only feel like it? What about the chores around the house? Laundry's probably going to stack up pretty quickly if you don't just get it done. Cleaning the dishes, same thing. But it applies to every aspect of your life. You can't just pick to be disciplined one day in one area and then choose to be disciplined in another. And then maybe on one day you let your fitness go for, quite some time and whatever. You must be disciplined in all areas of your life. Getting after it is not a lifestyle for everyone. Not everyone's going to live up to it. Not everyone's going to have the desire to put themselves through chosen suffering every single day. But I guarantee you, if you decide to do it, you will become better and become unrecognizable. It takes commitment. But I'm telling you, you can do it. Because if I was able to do it, you can too. We've talked about Fat Brett on this podcast. What a cool guy. But Fat Brett was a fiend. He would grab all the Cheetos, so many Pepsis, fully leaded Pepsis, and all the snacks in the house, and just chow down. Here's this is an embarrassing story about Fat Brett, but here's my degree. I would come home from school and sometimes we'd have microwavable pizzas or random frozen chimichangas. That frozen stuff that's just terrible for you but tastes like liquid gold. And I would grab them and I'd heat them up, right? And then I would go into my living room and sit on the table. And I'd pretend I was in a food review, and I'd be like, yes, this chimichanga has a good spice to it. Or, yeah, this pizza's cheese pull. That mozzarella is A-class. That's imported from Italy. I'd do stupid things like that, but that was Fat Brett. I thought that was just a kind of funny story. Fat Brett should, honestly, if anyone out there is a graphic designer, can you make a Fat Brett person to me? Just use my face right here. And then, I don't know, add it onto a little fat kid's body. With a lollipop. I don't know. That's kind of funny. Anyways, I've used discipline. I've been consistent over time. And now Fat Brett, he's still in there. He comes out from time to time. But I've taken over. So you can too. It's just the small habits. And like I said, it's those micro goals. So if you feel like you need to lose weight, then start. Your goal is now, I'm going to choose healthy foods. And then you start losing a little bit more weight and you want to lose more. Okay, I'm going to start tracking my foods and understand where I can cut things, right? But it starts by small things, and then that compounds into bigger overarching and I guess efficient goals. So think about that. Now, the other thing, this goes along with this whole goal setting and that kind of thing, is understand perspective in this, because perspective plays a big role. One simple perspective shift can help a lot. And I've talked about this before. I've done a couple episodes on it. But when I was talking about it with Dustin Ilgner, he's the guy that explored in the Amazon and goes on survival expeditions. But we talked a little bit about amor fati, which is the Stoic principle of love your feet. Love your feet, love your fate. That basically teaches us to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. So you might be thinking, I have a big challenge ahead of me. If I'm going to start this journey of getting after it, if I'm going to see if I can level up my game, if I can get better in this journey, like, what can I be doing differently? There's going to be challenges along the way, as there are in all things in life. And instead of recognizing them as like, damn it, I have to go through this again. Why are all these bad things happening to me? Say, no, I knew this was going to happen. How can I use this as growth? How can I use this as fuel for growth instead? It's important to make that distinction. The power of perspective helps you see obstacles rather as stepping stones and not barriers. And I love the story of Steve Jobs. I read a book by him, by Walter Isaacson, that if you like biographies, I would highly recommend this book, because it's very interesting seeing the beginning stage of Steve Jobs and how he was just this little, guy, this computer nerd with his friend, Steve Wozniak. They made a computer in the garage and that kind of thing. And it's interesting seeing a man who's faced countless setbacks, but never lost his vision for Apple. There were times when he almost lost the business, when he was ousted as the CEO of the company, but he eventually came back. He faced many challenges with many different products, but at the end of the day, his goal was to deliver amazing products to brands, or amazing products to people, and get that in their hands. And that ability to turn failure into opportunity was key to his success. And it can be the same for you too. So whenever a setback comes your way, I want to challenge you to be able to take a step back and look at it and say, okay, this sucked, but maybe what can I do to better the situation? How can I make the most of it? Maybe there's something I can learn. It's important to think that. It's important to take time to pause and be with your thoughts. I've had many times where I've had to have where I've had setbacks in my life, and I've had to have a different perspective shift. And a lot of those times, it's not comfortable. It's not fun to go through that. But at the end of the day, those always make me a better person. They have made me a better person, I should say. And same thing can go for you. But if you choose the alternative, and when obstacles and challenges come your way and you're like, damn it, me again. Like, why me? All this crap happens to me all the time. Why doesn't it happen to Jim over there? Like, that guy's got a great life. Seems like his life's going fine. Why is it all happening to me? You can take that approach. You can take that victimhood mentality, but it won't get you anywhere. It's not going to do anything for you. But guess what? Jim over there, who you pointed at, he's got his own issues. He's got so many challenges and setbacks that he has to deal with on a daily basis. So don't call out Jim. Everyone's going through something. Everyone has something that they have to go through that sucks. A lot of the times, you're going through it now, because life always throws challenges. It's never going to be perfect. And when you recognize that, that's the first step. So try and see setbacks and obstacles and challenges as more of an opportunity to get better and improve. Let's wrap this up, or go full circle here, because the first step to living up to your potential is to take action. Taking action is not easy, because it's easy to talk about your potential. It's where the action comes in where it gets difficult. The real transformation starts when you start walking towards it, when you take actions to get to that point. Like, I don't believe in I'm going to wait for the right time. Action starts now. Because if you start today, you'll be far ahead than when you thought the right time would be. Like, regardless of the circumstances, start taking action now. And no matter how small the steps may seem, you're making progress. Progress is progress if it's never been done before in your life. If you're getting better at something, track it, reflect on it, and then keep going. I want to talk about the beginning of this podcast for a second, because yes, it's not where I want it to be. It's not a viral podcast, which I'm fine with, because I'll tell you why. When I started this journey, I didn't really know what to expect from it. I didn't know what would come from sitting down and talking to a camera every week for a couple hours. I didn't know what would come from that. But what has come from it is I've shared conversations with some amazing people on this show. I've been able to learn from them, ask them deep and thought out questions that I want to learn. I've been able to hear them get emotional and share their own stories. And I've also been able to do work on my own and study topics that I'm interested in, like discipline, consistency, potential, and all those things that I talk about on a regular basis that I know make you better, but they all require work. And it's not easy. That's why I call this podcast Getting After It, because you're always trying to accomplish something. And, it's been a journey for me of self-education, self-improvement. And that reason alone, I'm recognizing what my potential is, which is why I'm trying to push more guests to come on and share their stories and push more content out, because I want you to feel that you can do the same. Life is short. We don't have a lot of time here. And so how can you get the most out of life? It's by trying to live up to your potential, trying to be the best that you can be on a daily basis and see what you can do to make your life and others around you better. You guys have so much in you. You guys seriously can do whatever you like. That might take years. It might take decades. But if you want it bad enough, you can find a plan. And if you want it bad enough, you'll learn a way to be consistent and find the discipline in order to do so. That's what it takes. It takes patience, discipline, consistency, and a vision for where you want to go. Show up every single day. And I promise you, you have to listen to this and believe it for yourself. You can do great things. You can. Don't wait for the right time, because it's never going to come. You'll talk yourself out of it every time, I promise you that. Recognize your potential and do it through these ways. Know your potential and set goals. That will give you clarity that will lead to action. Embrace that discipline and the consistency that's required, because small daily actions compound into greatness. Shift your perspective when things get hard, because obstacles should be looked at as opportunities for growth and to improve. And again, take action. No more waiting. Start now and keep going. You guys are capable of more than you think. So stop waiting and start acting. I really appreciate you guys tuning in for today's episode, and I hope this lit something in you that is going to help you move to take that action, that first step towards your goal. That's what getting after it's all about. And until next episode, everybody, keep getting after it, guys.